Welcome to our deep dive into Azul by Rubén Darío.
Azul.
Yeah.
Nice.
It seems like you are really interested in figuring out, like, its significance in the Modernism movement
Uh-huh.
and, like, how its themes and style really set it apart.
Right.
And to help us unpack all of that, we've got excerpts from a literary analysis.
Okay.
I have to admit,
Yeah.
even before, like, diving into the material, I was already, like, struck by how Azul is, like, considered just this cornerstone of Spanish-American literature.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason why it's still captivating readers, like, over a century later.
It's true. The impact of Azul is undeniable.
Right.
Published in 1888.
Wow.
It really did usher in a whole new era in Spanish-American literature. We call it Modernismo.
Uh-huh.
And this movement marked a distinct break from the literary traditions that came before it.
So it wasn't just like a new book on the scene. It was
Right.
like a whole new way of thinking about art.
Exactly. To
Yeah.
appreciate Azul, you need to understand the context. Okay.
Darío was living in Chile when he wrote it,
Uh-huh.
and he was heavily influenced by what was happening in Europe at the time, especially in France.
Okay.
You had these movements like Parnassianism and symbolism gaining traction.
Yeah.
They were all about art for art's sake,
Right.
elevating beauty and form above all else.
And Darío brought these ideas into Azul.
Yes.
But like with his own unique twist.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He took those influences and blended them with his own experiences, his own cultural background.
Right.
Remember, Darío was Nicaraguan,
Yeah.
and he brought a distinctly Latin American perspective to these European ideas.
So he wasn't just like mimicking European trends.
Yeah.
He was creating something entirely new.
Exactly.
Something that spoke to his own world.
Yes.
That's so cool.
And another key thing to remember is that Azul is a product of its time.
Okay.
The late 19th century was a period of immense change. Industrialization, rapid scientific advancements, societal upheaval.
Yeah.
There was this sense of unease.
A questioning of old values.
Okay.
Darío captured that feeling in Azul,
Yeah.
exploring themes of alienation,
Uh-huh.
the search for meaning, and the role of art in a rapidly changing world.
So we've got this, like, fascinating mix of cultural influences and historical context.
Right.
But what about the book itself?
Yeah.
Like, what makes its structure and style so unique?
Well, one of the first things you'll notice about Azul
Yeah.
is that it's not just a collection of poems.
Okay.
Darío blends prose and poetry, which was quite innovative for the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
You've got these beautiful prose poems like El Rey Burgués
Yeah.
and La Ninfa,
Uh-huh.
which deal with some pretty, like, weighty themes like the emptiness of material wealth
Right.
and art's power as, like, a spiritual sanctuary.
And these prose poems aren't just a stylistic quirk.
Yeah.
They allowed Darío to explore these themes in a more nuanced way,
Okay.
blending narrative and poetic language to create a truly immersive experience for the reader. He wasn't afraid to push the boundaries of what literature could be.
And then you've got the poems themselves. I
Yeah.
mean, they're so rich with imagery.
Yes.
You've got mythology, classical, and Eastern references all kind of woven together.
Right.
And what really struck me was, like, the musicality of the language. It's
Yeah.
like you can almost hear the word singing.
The musicality is a deliberate choice, and it's a hallmark of Modernismo.
Okay.
Darío was a master of language.
Uh-huh.
He used techniques like alliteration and synesthesia to create a symphony of sound and sensation.
Okay.
For example, synesthesia is where you blend different senses,
Right.
like describing a sound as having a color.
Okay.
Darío did this to evoke a deeper emotional response from the reader.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Yeah,
It's not just about the words themselves.
Right.
It's about the way that they make you feel.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this was a radical departure from the more formal, traditional style of Spanish poetry that was prevalent at the time.
Right.
Dario's use of language was fresh, innovative.
And it paved the way for a whole new generation of poets.
So we've talked about how Azul challenged literary conventions.
Right.
But what about the themes themselves?
Yeah.
What are some of the big ideas that Darío was grappling with?
Well, one of the central themes is this idea of art as a refuge, as an escape from the harsh realities of modern life.
Okay.
Darío saw the artist as a kind of superior being,
Right.
capable of creating beauty that transcended the mundane.
Okay.
He romanticized the artist as someone who could find solace and meaning in a world that often felt chaotic and disillusioning.
So it's like he's saying that art can be a kind of salvation.
Yes.
It's a way to find beauty and meaning in a world that's often lacking both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this ties back to the influence of Parnassianism,
Uh-huh.
which emphasized art for art's sake.
Right.
Darío believed that art shouldn't be burdened by social or political concerns.
Okay.
It should exist purely for its own beauty and the emotional response it evokes.
Of course, this doesn't mean that Azul is completely devoid of social commentary.
Right, like you mentioned the prose poem El Rey Burgués earlier.
Yeah.
It seems like Darío is kind of like critiquing a society that's obsessed with material wealth and is blind to the true value of art.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In El Rey Burgués, Darío presents this satirical portrait of a wealthy king who collects art simply for its status and monetary value.
Right.
He has no real understanding or appreciation for the art itself.
Oh, wow.
It's a commentary on the hypocrisy of a society that claims to value art, but fails to support the artists who create it.
It's a critique that still resonates today.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we still see this tension between like art as a commodity and art as a form of expression.
It's a timeless theme, and that's part of what makes Azul so enduring.
Right.
It speaks to these fundamental human experiences that transcend time and place.
And speaking of timeless themes,
Yes.
I couldn't help but notice how love and desire are portrayed in Azul.
Right.
It's very sensual,
Yeah.
very idealized.
That's another hallmark of Modernism.
Okay.
Love is portrayed as this exquisite, almost ethereal experience.
Wow.
It's part of this pursuit of beauty and aesthetic perfection that runs throughout the movement.
So it's not just about like physical attraction.
Oh.
It's about this like elevated, almost spiritual connection.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this ties back to the idea of escaping the mundane. Love, like art, becomes a way to transcend the everyday realities of life.
Oh.
It's a source of beauty, inspiration, and even spiritual fulfillment.
It's fascinating how all these different themes, art as refuge, social critique, the nature of love, are all kind of interwoven in Azul.
And it's not just the themes themselves,
Right.
it's how they're expressed through Dario's masterful use of language and symbolism.
Okay.
That's what we'll be unpacking next.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued.
Good.
So for our listener who's now like eager to delve deeper into the symbolism of Azul,
Yeah.
where should we start?
Well, let's begin with the title itself.
Okay.
Azul. Yeah. It's more than just a color.
Uh-huh.
It's a symbol that permeates the entire work.
I'm all ears.
Okay.
What's the significance of the color blue?
For Darío, blue represented a world of ideals,
Okay.
of beauty, purity, and spirituality.
Uh-huh.
Think of the vastness of the sky
Yeah.
or the depths of the ocean.
Right.
Blue evokes a sense of the infinite, the unattainable.
So it's like blue represents this ideal of aesthetic perfection
Yes.
that Darío is striving for in his art.
Precisely.
Okay.
And it's not just about visual beauty.
Uh-huh.
Blue also symbolizes the realm of dreams and imagination,
Okay.
a space where the artist can escape the constraints of reality and create their own world of beauty and meaning.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the color blue becomes like a kind of gateway into the world of Azul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sets the tone for the entire work.
And we see this symbolism like play out in various ways throughout the book.
Right.
Yeah.
For example, in the prose poem, La Ninfa,
Huh?
the nymph is described as having eyes the color of the sky and a voice as clear as the water of a spring.
So the nymph embodies this ideal of beauty and purity
Yes.
that blue represents.
Right. And she also represents this connection to nature,
Yeah.
which is another important element in Azul.
Okay, let's talk about nature.
Okay.
I noticed that Azul is like filled with descriptions of exotic landscapes,
Yes.
enchanted gardens,
Uh-huh.
and mythical creatures like nymphs and fauns.
That's right.
Yeah,
Nature plays a significant role in Azul,
right.
and it's not just about pretty scenery.
Okay.
For Darío, nature represented a world of harmony and beauty that stood in stark contrast to the increasingly industrialized and materialistic world he was living in.
So it's like nature becomes another form of escape,
Exactly.
another way to transcend the ugliness of modern life.
Yes. And the mythical creatures that inhabit these natural spaces also play a symbolic role.
Uh-huh.
They represent this connection to a more primal, more spiritual world. Yeah.
So it's not just about escaping into nature.
Mm-hmm.
It's about escaping into a world of myth and legend, a world where beauty and magic still exist.
Precisely.
Right.
And this ties back to the influence of symbolism,
Okay.
which often use myth and allegory to explore deeper truths about the human condition.
So we've got blue representing this ideal of beauty and spirituality.
Yes.
And nature representing this escape from the mundane.
Right.
What other symbols should our listener be on the lookout for?
Well, another key symbol is the use of mythology itself.
Okay.
Darío doesn't just incorporate mythological figures into his work.
Right.
He uses them to explore complex themes and ideas.
Can you give us an example?
Sure.
Okay.
Think about the poem Venus.
Okay.
Venus, the Roman goddess of love and beauty, becomes a symbol for this unattainable ideal of feminine perfection that haunts the speaker. He desires her, yet he knows that she exists only in the realm of myth and imagination.
So Venus represents this yearning for beauty and love that can never be fully satisfied in the real world.
Exactly. And this sense of longing, of searching for something that always seems just out of reach,
Right.
is a recurring theme throughout Azul.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
It's like Darío is constantly pushing us to look beyond the surface,
Mm-hmm.
to search for a deeper meaning in the world around us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And his masterful use of symbolism is one of the ways he does that.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful.
Good.
I feel like I'm starting to see Azul in a whole new light.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
But we've only just scratched the surface. There's still so much more to uncover.
Okay, I'm definitely ready to dive deeper.
Okay.
So for our listener who's now eager to understand how all these symbols come together to create like a cohesive artistic vision,
Yes.
what's next on our agenda?
Next, we'll be exploring some specific examples of how these symbols work together to create meaning and to enhance the overall aesthetic experience of Azul.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so we've established that like Azul is rich with symbolism.
Right.
But how do these symbols actually like work within the text? Can you like walk us through some specific examples?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's look at El Rey Burgués,
Okay.
the prose poem you mentioned earlier.
Right.
It's a fantastic example of how Darío uses symbolism to critique societal values. Remember, the king represents this materialistic upper class
Right.
that collects art without truly appreciating it.
Right. He's all about status and appearances.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the way Darío describes the king's palace is crucial.
Okay.
He fills it with opulent objects,
Mm-hmm.
gold, marble, luxurious fabrics,
Wow.
all symbols of wealth and excess.
Right.
But amidst all this opulence,
Yeah.
true art is stifled.
Because it's seen as just another possession, another way to show off his wealth.
Precisely.
Yeah.
One striking image is the description of a nightingale kept in a golden cage.
Okay.
The nightingale, known for its beautiful song,
Right.
symbolizes the artist,
Uh-huh.
trapped and commodified by the materialistic society.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
The bird song, which should be free and expressive, is silenced by the very thing that's supposed to elevate it, the golden cage.
Exactly.
Oh,
And then there's the ending of the story.
okay.
The king, bored with the nightingale's song, orders it to be killed.
Oh, wow.
This act symbolizes the way society often disregards and even destroys true art when it no longer serves its superficial purposes.
Wow, that's a pretty bleak commentary.
Yeah.
It seems like Darío is suggesting that genuine art can't thrive in a society that values possessions over creativity and expression.
That's one interpretation, and it's a valid one.
Right.
But it's also important to remember that Darío doesn't offer easy answers.
Okay.
El Rey Burgués is a complex work that invites multiple readings.
So it's not just a straightforward condemnation of materialism.
You're right.
It's a more nuanced exploration of the relationship between art and society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Darío such a compelling writer.
Okay.
He challenges us to think critically about the world around us, about our own values and assumptions.
Okay, so we've seen how symbols function in a prose poem.
Right.
Can we look at an example from one of Dario's actual poems?
Of course.
Okay.
Let's consider Sonatina,
Okay.
one of the most famous poems in Azul.
Right.
It tells the story of a princess who's trapped in a tower,
Yeah.
longing for freedom and love.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
The imagery is so vivid.
It is.
There's a lot of blue, right?
Yes. The poem is awash in blue.
Uh-huh.
The princess has eyes of azure,
Right.
and she dreams of a prince of Golconda, a mythical land associated with sapphires.
And we know that blue represents this ideal of beauty and escape.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's not just about visual beauty.
Okay.
The blue in Sonatina also symbolizes the princess's yearning for something more,
Okay.
for a love that can transcend her confinement.
So the blue becomes this multi-layered symbol representing both the princess's inner world
Right.
and her desire for escape.
Okay.
Precisely.
And then there's the image of the swan,
Okay.
which appears several times in the poem.
Uh-huh.
The swan is often associated with grace, beauty, and freedom.
Right. I can see how that would resonate with the princess's longing to break free from her tower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The swan becomes a symbol of the princess's unfulfilled desires,
Uh-huh.
of the life she dreams of living.
So in both El Rey Burgués and Sonatina,
Mm.
we see how Darío uses symbols to create these complex layers of meaning.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to enhance the emotional impact of the work.
Right. The symbols aren't just decorative.
They're not.
They're integral to understanding the themes and ideas that Darío is exploring.
Right.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm starting to appreciate just how carefully crafted Azul really is.
It is.
Every image, every word seems to be chosen with such intention.
And that's one of the hallmarks of Modernismo.
Okay.
It's a movement that's deeply concerned with aesthetics, with the beauty and artistry of language.
So it's not just about what Dario's saying.
Right.
It's also about how he's saying it.
Yes.
The style is as important as the substance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something that sets Azul apart from the more traditional poetry that came before it.
Yeah.
Darío wasn't afraid to experiment with language, to push the boundaries of what poetry could be.
It's like he's creating a whole new language of poetry.
Uh-huh.
A language that's rich with symbolism and sensuality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why Azul had such a profound impact on Spanish-American literature.
Right?
It paved the way for a generation of poets who were inspired to embrace this new aesthetic sensibility.
It's amazing to think that one book could have such a ripple effect.
It is.
Yeah.
It speaks to the power of artistic innovation.
Right.
Darío showed the world that poetry could be something more than just rhyming verses.
Uh-huh.
It could be a vibrant, multi-layered art form capable of expressing the complexities of modern life.
So how would you sum up the legacy of Azul?
Okay.
What are the key takeaways for our listener?
Well, first and foremost, Azul is the foundational work of Modernismo. It marks a turning point in Spanish-American literature,
Uh-huh.
a break from the past and a leap into a new era of artistic expression.
It's like a before and after moment in literary history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's so remarkable is that Azul achieves this groundbreaking status while simultaneously exploring these timeless universal themes.
Right.
The search for beauty and meaning, the tension between art and society, the complexities of love and desire.
Right.
These are themes that resonate with readers across generations.
That's what I find so fascinating about it.
Yeah,
It's both revolutionary and enduring.
it is.
It challenges us to rethink our assumptions about art,
Uh-huh.
while also speaking to something fundamental about the human experience.
And it does all of this with such artistry, such attention to language and detail.
Right.
It's a work that invites us to slow down,
Yeah.
to savor the beauty of language, to appreciate the power of symbolism.
It's like a treasure box filled with hidden gems just waiting to be discovered.
Exactly. And that's why I encourage anyone who's interested in literature, in art, in the human condition, to spend some time with Azul.
Right.
It's a rewarding experience that will stay with you long after you finish reading.
I couldn't agree more. Azul really is a testament to the power of language and the enduring allure of beauty.
Okay.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about Azul being a product of its time.
Yeah.
We've talked about how Darío was responding to the societal shifts and anxieties of the late 19th century.
Right.
But I'm curious, how do you think Azul's themes of escapism and the search for beauty resonate with readers today
Okay.
in a world that's arguably even more chaotic and overwhelming?
That's a great question, and it's one that literary scholars continue to debate.
Right.
On the one hand, you could argue that Azul's themes are even more relevant today than they were in Dario's time.
Okay.
I mean, we live in a world of constant stimulation,
Yeah.
information overload, and social pressures.
Right.
It's no wonder that people are seeking refuge in art and beauty,
Right.
in experiences that offer a sense of peace and transcendence.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like we're bombarded with negativity and ugliness from all sides.
Yeah.
Art can be a powerful antidote,
Yeah.
a way to reconnect with something beautiful and meaningful.
Exactly. And Azul offers a particularly rich and nuanced exploration of this idea.
Uh-huh.
Darío doesn't just present escapism as a mindless distraction.
Right.
He elevates it to an art form,
Okay.
a deliberate act of seeking beauty and meaning in a world that often seems devoid of both.
So it's not about ignoring the problems of the world.
Right.
It's about finding ways to transcend them, to find solace and inspiration in something larger than ourselves.
Precisely, and I think that's a message that resonates deeply with contemporary readers.
Yeah.
We may not be facing the same challenges as Dario's contemporaries, but we're certainly grappling with our own set of anxieties and uncertainties.
Right. And in a world where we're constantly connected to technology, where our attention is pulled in a million different directions, I think there's a real hunger for experiences that allow us to disconnect, to flow down,
Yeah.
and to appreciate the beauty of language and art.
Absolutely. And Azul offers that kind of experience. It's
Okay.
a work that demands your attention, that invites you to savor each word, each image, each carefully crafted phrase. It's a reminder that beauty can be found in the most unexpected places, even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty.
So for our listener who may be feeling overwhelmed by the complexities of modern life, what would you say is the most important takeaway from Azul?
I would say that Azul is a reminder that art matters. It has the power to transport us, to inspire us, to challenge us, and to connect us to something larger than ourselves.
No.
It's a source of beauty, meaning, and solace, even in the darkest of times.
Beautifully said. And for anyone who's now curious to experience the beauty and innovation of Azul
Yeah.
firsthand, where can they find it?
Thankfully, Azul is widely available in both Spanish and English translations. You can find it online in libraries and in bookstores. I highly recommend seeking out a copy and immersing yourself in Dario's world.
I second that. It's a journey worth taking. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Azul by Rubén Darío. We've covered a lot of ground today, from its historical context to its groundbreaking style and its enduring legacy.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey of literary discovery. Until next time, keep diving deep.